So I woke up this morning to a text message as opposed to my alarm going off.
My bad.
No, it worked out actually because turns out there were two episodes, episode 4 and 5 dropped, so I actually needed to get up earlier to watch them before going to work. And so, yeah, we got two episodes today unannounced. So, anyone who's listening, if you are not aware of that and you only watched episode 4, know that we're going to be doing full spoilers for 4 and 5. So, stop the video, go, watch it, and then come back because we're going to be jumping around. We're not going to do it in order, chronological order. We're jumping between the two episodes. We're going to treat them as if it's one long episode, basically.
It almost was.
Yes, I would agree with that. Um, this is Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Spencer and Larry.
Howdy.
Hey,
And we would also, before we get into this, I'd just like to say thank you. The channel had a really good weekend, a lot of new subs, a lot of comments, upvotes, and we appreciate that. We read everything. We try to comment or, at least upvote the comments. So if you haven't subbed yet, there's a lot of content coming to the channel. Please hit that sub button. And we're going to start this with a scene involving Mother and Tempest. Uh, I think this scene and this conversation highlights um, the both episodes. It's a good way of explaining what the two episodes are about, and that is the discussion about creator and creation. Tempest is upset. She's pregnant. She doesn't want this. We know why. She was raped, and she's carrying that child. But Mother is obsessed with the idea of creation, and she envies Tempest because she looks at herself as nothing more than she wants to be the creator as opposed to the creation. And I think that scene does a good way of summarizing what the theme of the two episodes seem to be.
I think she wants to be Frankenstein, not Frankenstein's monster. And and me and you had talked about it, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but she's obsessed with the idea of, you said it, being the creator or not the creation. And Tempest has that ability. I don't even know that she's jealous of the fact that she is pregnant, but I think she's jealous of the fact that she's able to even get pregnant, as
well,
opposed to the baby factory thing that she was. I don't even fully
well,
understand how that works.
yeah. She seems to unknowingly be projecting her wants on the Tempest because she was clearly reprogrammed to mother and to be a mother, and her feelings seem very, very real, and even though she doesn't seem to think they are, and she seems to really just be pushing this idea that being a mother is a great thing, and and it fits in line with her programming too, because she's supposed to protect all the kids, which it would include Tempest and her child. So it's partially programming, and it's partially projection from what I'm seeing.
Yeah. That's a great way of summarizing it, I think. Um, I'm there. What are they? The myth? I can't remember the name of their religion. I'm just going to call them the Order of Soul.
It's like Mithriac.
So
It's like Mithariac or something.
Yeah.
oh,
I think it's
I like Order of
Mithriac
Soul
or
better.
something.
It's myth. Yeah. So they, we got a lot of questions and some answers in the first three episodes. We were on something completely new in these episodes, that being a structure found by that order that's clearly not, and it appears not to be man-made. The second I saw it, I was like, "Oh shit, okay." So we're going we're going in the direction. What did y'all think or feel, or did you like that? Okay, this puts this series on a different kind of path as far as the way the story's going to play out, or what y'all think about that?
The first thing I thought was they're on a giant like D&D board and somebody's D12 got stuck, because once they showed the overhead shot, it was a D12. Like looked like a dice or a die. But I like the fact that once again, they're giving us a bunch of answers, but they're still giving us just as many questions, because for this to go, you know, 5 more episodes now and hopefully more seasons, I think that there has to be some kind of intrigue. So the fact that they keep giving us something else after they answer a question, to me, is a positive thing for this series.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Had roughly the same thoughts, and I also feel like the fact that they found this and the fact that it was described in their holy scripture and a lot of other little hints in this show, the fact that there's a mysterious creature also watching them and keeping tabs on them, and things just happen to fall in place perfectly. It seems to me like perhaps they're being played to some degree, that perhaps some outside force established their religion and led them to this planet.
It's a DM.
Yeah, yeah.
You come
I
across a hole in the ground.
Roll for
yeah,
initiative.
yeah.
Roll
I know. I
perception.
agree with you. I think there's plenty of evidence throughout, which we'll discuss, that shows their things aren't randomly happening. There seems to be a plan. Now, what the end game of that plan, who not completely sure yet, but there does seem to be a plan, and some higher advanced thing is seems to be orchestrating it. The question is, how old is it? How long has it been around?
And for what purpose?
And what is the purpose of it exactly? So we get a major through the 2 episodes. Campion sort of has his own little subplot that involves uh, killing animals. That's sort of the best way to describe it. He's told by Paul when he asks about the mouse being killed, what happens to it. And he basically is like, well, people, I guess, go to heaven or whatever their afterlife is, but animals, they're just, dead is dead. And so this bugs the hell out of Campion. So he refuses to kill the creature. Father wants them to kill the creature for food, and he's just like, no. So he goes on a quest to hunt for food for the kids, and it is a lot of dialogue between him and Father. I don't know if you guys want to talk about any of that particular portion where he's hunting for food with or
Well,
looking for plant life or nuts or whatever.
Well, I'm just going to say everything Father says makes sense. He mentioned to Mother they are going to break down one day, and there's a good chance that a lot of these kids will have to exist on their own. And if you're expecting them to be the genesis of a new humanity, people are going to have to know how to hunt. Otherwise, their only option is they're going to have to learn how to hunt. They're going to have to learn how to fight. Otherwise, they're going to have to run from these things that have been attacking them in the previous episodes.
Well, that was my thing. Even if they don't want to eat it, they're still going to have to learn how to kill it, because they're going to have to protect themselves at some point. Regardless of whether they're able to forage for nuts and berries, is irrelevant if they are attacked and get killed.
Right.
They have to learn how to do.
Did you say irrelevant?
Irrelevant?
It sounded like irrelevant.
An elephant?
Well,
They're a little
an
elephant.
image of an elephant has popped in my head. See, but
Well, now that you said it, now I just think of Snuffleupagus.
I thought it was an interesting line where Father's trying to create a spear, to kill the creature, and he's questioned about it because it's against their rules to make weapons. And I thought that was an interesting thing because, Campion's like, oh, we're not allowed to make weapons. I guess that's their code, and it makes sense that would be a rule. Weapons are bad, war is bad, etc. But then on the whole idea of self-defense with Mother Nature, what if a creature or some animal that could threaten you came, that they had no plan for that? I think there are some holes in their programming or their mission, if you will. That's what I got out of that.
In fact, both factions showed up to this world expecting to have no war, no violence, any of that. Well, I will say the religious sect, they showed up much better armed for a group of people that were expecting peace on this world.
They were a little bit better prepared. I think that you go to Father, and I talked about him basically adapting, like he is evolving, And I think that, Larry talked about the gaps in his programming because he, unlike Mother, from what they showed us so far, is that this was always his programming. This was not, he wasn't changed to do this. He wasn't, formally a necromancer, which he might be. Shit, I don't know. But from what they've shown, this was always his programming. So for him to not have these things in his programming and still be able to adapt, to me shows, which what we've said before, a greater AI or something going on that is helping them evolve past what they were supposed to.
And we're also, well, at least in these last 2 episodes, we're seeing father become more like mother and mother become more like father.
Absolutely. I noticed that as well. Eventually, Tempest just gets really damn hungry and she kills the creature. But upon doing so, discovers that it too was pregnant, and that sort of messes with her emotionally. And then we get an interesting little dinner scene with a very dark joke, but that made me laugh, where the kid's like, which part's the baby? Because they chop up the meat and serve it to the kids for the nourishment.
Right.
And it was such a dark, humorous thing, but clearly it was meant to be. I think that whole scene was interesting. Yeah, I thought that whole scene was interesting. The kids are really damn good, all of them. I think the performances in this show have been very impressive.
Yes.
I do think that, and I talked to you about this today at work, Brian. I feel like the humanoid looking things, that they are either a civilization that perhaps tried to get there before, that were humans that maybe have been mutated by the radiation, because everything's radiated, all the food, all the ground, everything. Because not only did, they have like when they showed her killing it and she was up close to it, they looked like human legs. They looked like human arms. The face didn't look fully human, but, it looked like maybe mutated. But when they were eating this creature, they all said it tasted like pork, which they always say how much humans are like pigs, which is always funny to me. But, it was just like a nod to something that I already believe. So I may be like connecting dots that aren't there, but was something that I was like, oh shit.
Well, I was noticing, especially when Cambion and Paul see the one, eating the moss or whatever it is in one of the episodes, I did notice that it seemed more humanoid than they have before.
Especially the face. We got a good shot of the face. Yeah.
Definitely the face. And I also want to point out that while, yeah, we did see that the carbos, or whatever the name of the food source was previously, that those were irradiated. The acorn-looking things that Campion tried to harvest, those are actually poisonous. And they seem to point out that that's poison. And I think for a particular reason, I think that's going to play in some point later. Like maybe they'll use that as a defense against either these creatures or the religious order. I just felt it was foreshadowing that
they're going to poison the shit out of somebody. They're going to leave like a trail of acorns or some shit.
Speaking of getting the moss, the fungus, Paul and Campion decide essentially that they're against killing animals, therefore they're sort of living this. They're basically like a vegan. Like in all reality, those two characters have decided that they will not kill and eat flesh,
right?
While the other kids have not made that decision. So it's interesting seeing this their little society change. The different little factions and groups and belief systems that seem to be rolling out between all of them.
Well,
that being one.
I couldn't stop laughing because the way they did it, like there's so many memes about being a vegan, and I know 2 or 3 vegans that aren't like those memes, but they're like super pushy about their beliefs. Same thing with Mother when she was starting to believe later, and then the religious order, kind of using that, pressing your beliefs on somebody else. But when they were like, well, we're just going to eat this wonderful fungus, and
Because nothing had to die.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
thought it was funny that they were trying to press. It's just another belief system. There's like 5 or 6 of them going on, throughout this episode, and everyone is trying to push their beliefs on somebody else, and that was just another example of it. And I thought that was,
Well, I mean,
interesting.
it's a big part of the theme of the show. How these beliefs develop.
Mhm.
So like well, I mean, the fact that early on Campion has never had to kill anything, and when it came to that, he was disgusted by the act of it. So he went through great efforts to find something he didn't have to kill. Well, I mean, technically, he killed the plants, but something he didn't have to kill in order to eat. And
Well,
which they did point out that it was easier for him because he could eat the carbos. But
yes, he does have that option, but also Campion has never known an animal in
Yeah.
this world. As far as they know, they can't find animals on this world, so he's never seen anything. So that mouse to him was this amazing thing, and the idea of killing any other life is just bizarre to him because
Yeah,
it
exactly.
seems precious.
It seems more precious. He sees more of a equivalent to himself than they would, because they've been on the ship. They've seen animals. They've been in that simulation. They probably have a good idea of what livestock looks like and what that process is. The only level of disgust was with the kids from the religious sect, was when they had to kill the creature
Kill it.
themselves.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd say everybody made that decision except for the oldest kid, who decided, he's like, no, I'm not going to kill. But I will
Well,
reap the benefits because I'm the son of a cleric, and that would make me unpure.
But that was all, and I wanted to talk about that too. The fact that there's a caste system, and your role dictates what you do and how you operate within that religious sect. And he was it's brought up again later in another scene where clerics, this is what I do, warriors, you do this. And so I thought that was interesting that he was trying to bring that ideology with him still, and Father corrects him. He's like, that's not that's not operating here. We're not under that system. You will have to know how to hunt. You will have to be able to do these things.
But I think part of that too is fear. I mean,
Well,
fear of the unknown.
he was using it as an excuse,
Yes.
absolutely. But it was a system that
did exist.
It did exist, yeah.
Well, not only that, given his actions here and in previous episodes, he does seem to see himself as better and more pure
by far.
than the other kids. He seems to see himself as superior.
And he even used, I had said, I believe in the last review, that when they all start praying, Father arrives immediately. And I mentioned the fact that you could use that and say that was a divine thing. And he did. He straight up said, we prayed and then Father came and saved us. So he was the one that pointed that out.
Right.
So he's going to use his beliefs and bend them in any way that, suits the situation or explains what he feels needs to be explained.
But I think what you just said, the suiting, your beliefs to fit your situation, was also another theme of this show, because you look at Campion saying, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right. But part of that too is, once again, I think fear. He's never had to kill anybody. He's never even touched a weapon. He's never done any of these things. And although he saw his family, perish around him because of the, radiation, he himself has never done any of that stuff. He's been very protected. Shit, mother's going around, nuking planes out of the sky and stuff. And he had his protector. He's never had to do any of that himself. So once he was forced to, I think part of that was fear. Now, his belief system is, being, I think, kind of, I'm trying to.
Well, it's very much it's very much influenced by everything that Mother and Father initially taught him, even though those beliefs were, kind of thrown out of whack by new people showing up and being exposed to new ideas. Those initial beliefs that he should be part of a pacifistic society, he seems to have taken that to heart, and we get a little bit more of that with the scene with the other embryos, which answers one of our other questions.
Yes.
That one of the other kids destroys, and how distraught Mother was about that. And I can imagine that he would see that as, her destroying the Mithras cult, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He would see that as
Soul.
We'll just call that, yeah. Soul's children.
Soul's children. Yeah.
He would see her just killing them.
Praise the sun.
Without without any remorse and any feelings regarding that. He would see that as a hypocritical act. It's like the first time you see your parents as being flawed as a kid, where you're like, oh, they have flaws too, but to him, this throws his whole belief system out of whack to some degree. He still holds to the pacifism side of it, but he seems to be waning on the religious part of it.
He's starting to blend them. Yeah.
Well, and although he's, me and Brian talked about how he is smarter than some of the other kids.
Yeah.
He's still not that old. So when you talk about,
he's 12.
So you talk about the, not only naivety.
Naivete.
Yeah, there you go. How naive he is. But he's 12, so he's been protected. And not only has he been protected, he doesn't know shit. So for all of this, the religious part to be new to him, having to try and kill things being new to him, this is all new. And all kids, that's a big adjustment. It's a big adjustment for adults, but I can't imagine, this 12-year-old being thrown in this kind of situation. And
true, but I'll say some of the religious stuff started pre these kids coming, because remember, once all of his siblings died, he started looking for answers because he was confused. It didn't make sense to him. And so he started praying secretly. Father was like, you're not supposed to do that. So he was already starting to question their systems and their beliefs even, before these kids came. Then you bring these kids in, and so now it's gone, even more extreme.
Well, yes, because he's looking for answers.
Yeah.
And, just like anybody, when they show, and I'm not talking about being for or against anything kind of religion, but when you date back, because this is almost, although they have technology, it's almost primitive. Like they're like cavemen. They're using a sling and rocks and stuff. So for them to go back to that day and age, they're looking for an explanation, and he doesn't have any. So
yeah,
and looking for something to explain what's going on.
Even though this is science fiction, the imagery with the uniforms, with the religion and everything is very medieval, and I'm sure on purpose. And their structure, their warrior, their cleric system, all that stuff. It's a very medieval, priesthood, the church running the state, all that stuff.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to say about Campion adopting those beliefs for one. I mean, it's also in part because, at his age, having that much trauma, all of his siblings just kind of dying, except for him, overnight. It's a lot of tragedy, and you'd absolutely at that age have to find some sort of way to make sense of it.
That's a lot of survivor guilt.
Yeah. And, ironically, to some degree, they may have pushed him to it because, because in educating them that they are supposed to live without faith, they also had to teach them what it is to some degree. And now he's looking at that. He's looking at the things that, father and mother told him to turn away from, and saying like, well, shit, maybe they're wrong to some degree because what we're doing isn't working because everyone's dead.
Yes, exactly. Well, speaking of religion, let's talk about our boy Marcus.
Hell yeah.
Boy, oh boy, did some things occur. So first of all, the Eminence, I believe he has a name, Ambrose, they named him. Ambrose clearly doesn't trust Marcus. He doesn't trust Sue. And that leads to an assassination attempt. At least we think it was the Eminence that did it. His droid definitely did it. They put a earpiece in Marcus and made everyone think that he was, I guess, hacked somehow by the necromancer, and they were going to kill him.
Right.
They ended up killing the droid instead. And this all sets up the next scene. Y'all want to say anything about that before I get to the
Well,
real
well,
crazy
yes,
scene?
I do, because that scene made me think when they thought that, oh, the necromancer is rewriting his brain. I was like, my God, what can't these things do?
Yes. Okay. I want to look. I want to carry on with that because I did not put that in my notes. But you're right. They can make. She can make the people
She
just
can make
fall
them
asleep.
sleep.
She when she was removing the trackers, which we'll talk about later, she touched her skin and it healed. Did you notice that? Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
what the hell? Yeah, right. What is the limit of her power? We don't know. That we keep learning more about what she's capable of. How advanced a machine she is. It's insane.
Well, I don't think that it could be her, because we keep talking about how there's probably an advanced AI, or some kind of alien or something kind of helping control what's going on.
You think her coding and is being expanded upon her programming by
It,
this
it
potential
might be.
AI?
Yeah, I think it is, because I mean, we have talked about it before, but I don't know that it's necessarily alien. I think that it may perhaps be a super AI for, the Campion Sturges, the creator, for him to send her to this planet for, uh, the followers of Saul to choose that planet. They both chose the same place, but they both chose it for a reason. So who's to say that somebody didn't choose that before them? So
Well,
I think,
I have a theory about that.
but I think the advanced AI part uh, may be controlling the other AI. So I think that, the androids. I think that whatever this is kind of pulling the strings, is the one that put the earwig in Marcus. I don't think that it ever was the Eminence Ambrose. I don't think it was him. I don't think he had anything to do with it.
So
Uh,
you think it was the potentially the giant D12 that caused the His Eminence's android to put the earwig in Marcus, like
I do.
it manipulated his emotions to some. Okay, yeah, that does make sense.
Because when he came up to Marcus, like right before he set him on fire or whatever, he he told me, he's like, I know you're not Marcus, but he didn't say, you know it was me. He didn't say anything. So for him to whisper anything to him and him to choose that led me to believe that he didn't have anything to do with the earwig part.
Right.
And when he pushed him into the giant D12 and set him on fire, Marcus was hearing shit. Marcus was already feeling like he was touched, and then all of a sudden he pushes him into it and it gets warm again. So, like, what kind of coincidental timing was that? So I think that I don't know who's in control of it or what's going on, but I think that it is this super AI that could have been created by alien. I don't know, but at this point, who knows? But I think that it is a super AI that's controlling kind of everything that's going on, which would follow Ridley Scott. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, After that sequence, there, going back to the whole rule of how things operate, Marcus basically stands up and starts, giving orders. This is what we're going to do. And the head cleric is like, well, I'm in charge. According to the line of succession, I am in charge. And all the people are like, well, did you just see what the hell happened last night? Like, they're all like, that was some divine shit if ever
Like he
there
heard
was
the
some.
voice of God and he
The
set him on
God
fire.
spoke to him and he he caused the guy to burst into flames. Uh, Not to mention the structure had gotten cold. Then all of a sudden it heats up to kill the guy, and then it gets just warm enough to keep them
Just
alive.
Yeah, just warm enough to heat them throughout the night.
He's like, no, he's a prophet, and clearly he's in charge now. And if you notice that scene, everybody took the knee except the clerics. They hesitated until she decided, okay, and then took the knee. So they're clearly, they didn't like the idea of breaking their code, and clearly they're the ones that are supposed to be the leaders. The warrior class takes orders, and this was sort of going ahead of that, but they really didn't have a choice because they were, the Warriors had spoken up, and that's just what it was going to be.
Right.
Um,
Well, yeah, it's also the sort of situation where if they're against you and they disagree, and if they see Marcus as his eminence, then who are they clerics for?
yeah, good point. So yeah, that was a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of crazy scenes. And Marcus, the most interesting part is he actually did hear voices. Something spoke to him, and he's starting to question his own situation. Is he a man of faith? What does this mean? And it happens multiple times. And I guess I'll jump to that next big part, which I was shocked they went there. They go to the ship to get equipment and stuff, and all of a sudden, look who's still alive. Tempest's rapist is alive and well. And I like the whole security system. That was really cool.
Yeah, I thought the security, leash was cool.
And the helmet.
I also thought the fact that like instantly the whole church just beats the crap out of him as soon as they find him.
Yeah, I did like that too. They were beating his ass because he was sentenced to death,
I wonder if any of the other females that were there, because there's a couple, if any of them were victims of his also then. I mean, I'm sure he deserves an ass beating, but I wonder if any of them were directly affected by it. Maybe one of their kids, spouses, significant others, them themselves, if any of them happened to be assaulted by him, because he talked about doing it to a bunch of people even beforehand. And then he was like, well, maybe that's why he was speaking to me. Like, he felt that being a sexual assaulter was his calling in life. And I was like,
and so that's the interesting thing is he claims that he was spoken to as well.
Well, yeah. He said he was this person before, but he's like, no, this time I was told to do it.
So the question is, and this is some dark storytelling if this is where they're going with it. I don't know how I feel about it. We'll see how it plays out. If that's true, perhaps the idea is that this great entity or whatever is guiding them, alien, AI, whatever, needed Tempest to be pregnant and needed that all to play out. Therefore, he was led to do what he did. But I'm like, man, that's some dark ass storytelling. If that's
I believe it's that to some degree, but I think we have, maybe more elements at play here than we know. I think that was an AI, absolutely, but I think that was the AI that controls the simulation that he happens to have been let out of early while they were en route to this world. Because they're also a limited population. There were only so many people on that ship, and potentially the AI did make a decision and tell him to do this.
So you're saying a separate thing, the ship itself?
The ship's AI, the simulation, and like his wife mentions that Marcus's wife, that would they call it simulation psychosis or something similar to that? She said that that's actually very, very common. What if it's not so much of psychosis as much as it is a programming or a reprogramming?
I don't think that is far off. It could be because of the way this show has already been set up. But I think that, and they've shown it in the past where people use religion to impose their will because they see it as power.
Well,
and I think that this guy, I don't know that this guy was a part of that. I think that he's using that, but I think that, the AI may have let him out early, but depending on who he is or how high up he was, he may have been in control of the simulation to begin with.
He was the number two.
So all those people sleeping, he may have never been put into the simulation. He may have just been walking around diddling people. And I think that he used it as power, because for him to be that beforehand, when did the religion start? Was he always a religious person? Has he always been in this religious order and been doing this the whole time? And then finally, while he was on the ship, get spoken to? I think that it's a power play. I think that he's just a fucked up dude.
Well, yeah. I think it's both. I think he's messed up, and I think the ship told him to do part of that. Part of the reason I think it's both is because he admitted that was a thing he freely did, and he referred to them all as his lessers. But he said he heard a voice in his head the way that Marcus is hearing it now. I feel like
the AI was using him
well, the
because he
whole
knew
point
it
of
was
the
fucked up.
well, yeah, because if they had woken up anybody else to, sort of to do the same thing to sort of shore up their numbers, most people would be too moral to comply with that.
Yeah, I'm only disagreeing because it's either one of two things. It's either a red herring, and you're right, or this thing really did communicate with him. I'm talking about the structure on the planet. Because Marcus is looking at it as, oh my God, if he heard this thing too, and I'm hearing it, well, what are we hearing? But it could be it could be just throwing off the story. I agree. But then
Well,
also the idea that he's the one guy that survived, no one else survived.
yeah, that is an odd coincidence, and that's a good point. But the reason I feel like we have the ship's AI and perhaps another AI or force on this planet is because, well, let's think about it. You have the whole stasis, not stasis, but simulation,
I do agree, but
psychosis that they've been talking about, and you also have which she said is fairly common, and you also have the fact that God, I forgot what I was going to say, but my thing being, he freely admitted it that it's the kind of thing he would do.
oh yeah. I agree. He was chosen for a reason. Absolutely. I think our disagreement is you think it's the ship. I think it's the other.
Oh
thing.
yeah, now
I think that's where our
I remember my other
disagreement
point now. The reason I think that is because the ship is clearly intelligent to some degree because they're all asleep, they're all in stasis. It navigates, it plots a course, it educates them. We saw that certain people that we thought were people within that simulation weren't in these two episodes. The gentleman that welcomes them to the ship when they plug into the simulation, I thought that was an actual like priest of their religion. No, that was just part of the simulation.
It's Morpheus.
But do you think so? Because I have it in my notes, I was going to get to it later. Mother keeps being led to the simulation,
Mm-hmm.
and clearly there, it's trying to tell her something. But I think that's the other thing, using the simulation to its purposes. In other words, I think it's orchestrating everything. It's manipulating the simulation. It's manipulating several things to get whatever it is it's trying to achieve.
Yeah, you could be right there, and that would make sense. That would make a lot of sense because clearly something is leading her towards that simulation, and it would make sense for it to be one force doing both things.
And my thing is whatever's hopping around the little hooded thing, is that like the AI, or is that what's controlling the AI? I think
I don't think either.
Yeah, I think it's potentially unrelated.
Well, the only reason I think it is related, I don't know if you were getting to this part yet, Brian.
No, go ahead.
I'm trying to remember Talia.
I was going to do that. Yeah, go ahead.
But the Talia stuff, how both father and mother thought they saw Talia.
Well, Mother's second time in the simulation, Talia's toy was in the simulation. She thought she saw it, so
and that was the reason I think that this thing is, whether it's part of it or not, or whether it is the AI or controlling it, it was leading Mother to that. It was also leading Father, trying to manipulate him too, because remember, Father was supposed to be watching the kids and Mother kept being like, you weren't paying close enough attention. It was because he was distracted by whatever this thing pretending to be his dead daughter is. But it's also proving that not only do they have feelings or they're creating feelings, this thing can help cause feelings, cause, this awakening inside of them. So that's why I think that whatever this is, pretend to be Talia, is either the AI or controlling the AI.
Which is a good point because clearly it seemed like the android that worked for the former head of their religion, she seemed very angry at Marcus, like really angry that it, to the point that it does seem like she acted independently. to plant the
She
earwig.
did. Every time she looked at him, she did seem to have a an anger about her. I also want to point out you're very right in that, and I was just thinking about that. Sometimes we see that cloaked figure, and it appears to be a hallucination. Sometimes we see it, and it seems to be physical. There, it is. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I'm not. Is it? Yeah. Who is it exactly? You know, and its movements. I assumed it was in fact Talia, or a person, but then the way it moved was not natural.
Yeah, when
Human
it
couldn't do
sprinted
that.
away from Marcus, when it was like running up the walls and shit. That's
Now, still could be a person. Now, there's another piece of information we were given that before Ambrose is burned alive, we found that his hand was like mechanical. He had like a artificial mechanical limb, which makes sense that they're, especially with fucking the necromancer with their tech.
cybernetics.
That yeah, absolutely. If you lose limbs, lose body parts, you could replace them. So who's to say this thing doesn't have limbs that are different? I don't know. I'm just saying the ability to enhance a human definitely exists in their world. Whether or not that's what this is, or who knows. But Larry, what is your theory on the cloaked figure, the way they jumped around and everything? Like what did you think?
Well, I'm
'Cause we
not
haven't
sure.
talked about we
I'm
haven't
not
talked about
sure
this
whether
episode.
that's part of the force that's directing them to do some of these things, or I'm not sure whether that's like a separate alien race. In fact, I had a theory that that perhaps that they're part of a separate race that were previously lured here, maybe via the same means. Them spreading this
That's a good
religion to
idea. That's
lure
a
them
good.
to this world for some reason.
That's
Like,
not too far fetched either, because this thing, instead of trying to control them, could be trying to warn them.
yes,
Yeah. I mean, I don't
The
think so, but I can see.
it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and look, we when we were doing the Perry Mason stuff, that's one of the things I love about it is, we didn't always agree on everything, and people in the comments had different, theories and everything, and that's always the fun of, seeing what's
Stuff like
coming
this
next. And hopefully it stretches for several weeks as opposed to them dropping the whole damn thing in 1 to 2.
tomorrow.
Yeah, for real.
Like there will
So
be no episode next week and 5 episodes the week after.
yeah.
They'll just call
So
the season.
Mother's second time in the pod. This was one of my favorite sequences in the entire over the 2 episodes. Um, was the
Sturgis popcorn.
backstory of Campion Sturgis, the creator, if you will. He's basically Frankenstein. He's like this scientist who has a cool lab, and he's got these ideas of what the world could be, and he seems like a nicer version of that. He doesn't seem to necessarily have the god complex, but in a way, what he's doing is in fact that. But it's a great sequence. We see that her memories of him were wiped because she felt emotion, she felt pain losing him. We know that he loved her, he cared for her. He took one of these terrible weapons of destruction and he turned it to the future, something that could create life, carry on human life and everything. I thought it was a wonderful couple scenes. I thought the guy was great in it. Several things about this. A, we never saw him truly die. Could he pop up again? Question. Was he being communicated with by a higher alien or whatever to do what he did, or no? Or was it just him doing what he was always going to do? Is there any other secrets hidden in her programming that he put there that we don't know about yet? A lot of questions. And finally, before you guys get into this, why is it that she was being led to recover these memories? What was it that was guiding her, and what was the importance of her remembering this?
Not only that, but why does it seem like he either encountered Father later or he chose to introduce Mother to Father only when they were put on the ship to go to this new world? Like, what's Father's backstory?
That's true. We don't get any of that. Hopefully we get that later.
I think too. We talked about Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster. I don't know that he felt the same way about her that she clearly felt about him. I think that he loved her, but it was more of a pride Like, he loved what he was able to do. He loved his creation. He loved, and not necessarily God complex, but, almost impressed with himself and happy that he's going to be able to carry on his beliefs, his, you know,
Ideas.
and everything. So I don't know necessarily that he loved her, but she clearly got to the point where she loved him. And, once she remembered, this, he's my creator. And like we had talked about it before, the creating a new religion. And she is so, now that she remembers, infatuated with him, which, once again, I don't know if these are implanted memories, if this is really what happened, if this is the AI.
That's a good point too.
Maybe the Campion is not the guy jumping around, but in control of one of those. Or maybe he sent somebody to this planet before that failed. Like, maybe he sent a ship like that before everything happened, and it didn't quite work out. And this is the ramifications of that. Like, I don't 100% know, but I do like the mystery and trying to figure it out.
Right. And he seemed to have an idea that, or at least a belief that her emotions were very much real, because he rid her of those memories before he put her on the ship, because it was clearly painful to her.
But he also knew that she was going to one day, and that was the thing that made me believe that maybe one of his previous Frankenstein's monsters, or maybe the AI that's at this planet now, is that he said, I'm just going to kind of lock it away. I'm not going to delete it. So he didn't want to get rid of it. He wanted it to still be there. So that leads me to believe that he was hoping that one day she would unlock it or remember it. And
Right.
How the hell else would she do that without help?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree with that. I do think, like you said, as far as his exact feelings towards her, I think it was also a loneliness thing, because there's the line where she's like, "I like our time together," and he's like, "Me too," and he starts to get emotional there. But you got to think as far as we know, he's by himself doing all this work. He has no one, and all he's thinking about is literally saving humanity. Like, that's got to be one hell of a burden on your shoulders. And so, there's, I think, that too. Plus, like you said, I think he's really proud of himself. Like I said, he took this killing machine and he's turned it into a mother. Like, literally, like, what an accomplishment. And so, yeah.
Yeah, this murder bot is now suddenly
Exactly.
mom of the year.
And she says, so here's the big question, and Father even sort of questions this towards the end, when in the simulation she states, he loved me. In her eyes, she's like, oh my God, my creator loved me, he cared about me. And this affects her for the remainder of that episode. Everything she's in after that, she's a little different, she's acting different, she's saying things differently. When she goes to save, is that when she goes to save Tempest?
Yeah.
It's right after, yeah.
Right after that, because she's actually told that one of the children.
Yes, the simulation warns her. Yes, using Campion's likeness. Absolutely. What is that about? Yet again, the idea that something is manipulating the situation. So she ends up saving Tempest, and then she's humming and she's happy, and almost as if she's on a holy quest now, because it's not just about following the mission. It's not just about, continuing humanity. Her creator loved her and wanted her to do this. And Father notices. Father is picking up. He says, you are acting like a believer, and he questions it. And she's like, oh, you're being crazy. But what is this going to do with their relationship? And just how more extreme is she going to get going forward?
I think one of them is going to kill the other one. I don't know which one's going to win. Obviously, you would think that the necromancer would win.
Well, here's the thing. There's a couple of those eyes in play now, like the necromancer eyes. Like, she wears them in a bag on her neck, and Father's becoming more like her. Who's to say he loses trust in Mother and that he doesn't take those and wind up killing Mother and becoming more like her.
I'm not 100% unsure that that's not what's going to happen. I think that it's very much Father is the big like analyzer. He's, very analytic, thinking of everything, the best way to make them go forward, the best way to have them survive. This is not the best way for them to survive in his eyes. So for her to suddenly start, teaching them differently, kind of grasping onto whatever religion she's getting ready to create, because I have a feeling it's going to be nuts. But it's for her to start leading them away from what he was programmed to teach them. He's going to start seeing her as a threat here shortly. And he already felt kind of inadequate. He already felt like his purpose was negated by what she was doing. But I think that he's going to find his own purpose, and his own purpose is going to be protecting the kids from her.
Well, yeah, and that's the real issue here, because he's seeing her methods as being superior to what he was doing. She told him that his idea of love was actually weakness, and while she seems to be seeing his side of things now, he seems to have taken that to heart, and he seems to kind of believe it himself, that I'm hindering them, that my weakness is what's holding them back, what could potentially get these kids killed, because they've had several moments where Father is a little lax or Father is too trusting, and the kids are in danger, and Mother has to sweep in and save them. So he's seeing himself as flawed.
Marcus, after getting to that base and dealing with the cloak figure, they find a map and, of where the base is going to, where Mother and Father are with the kids. And they're excited. Yeah, we know where they're at. We're going to go find them. Also, earlier, I didn't mention this. I skipped over it accidentally. When they go to the ship, they discover this plate. They quickly explain what it is. It completely went over my head. I wasn't paying that much attention. I know it collects energy or something, and they were going to use it as some kind of weapon. Did either of you get a better understanding of what that was exactly?
Yeah, I think if he can fire that at the necromancer and like deactivate her.
Okay,
is the idea. But
because remember, Campion or not Campion, Campion, to collect the necromancer, he like shot her with this big electricity type thing.
That's true.
And I think that's what it was. It was
okay. Good point. Yes. So they're using, and Marcus, made the decision, which we sort of skipped over. Also, the prisoner, the rapist, is basically, he's like, well, we're gonna kill him anyways. Let's use him as our weapon. That way, if he dies, who cares? And so that's the plan. Did you get any, Larry, you're a Souls guy, video
yes,
game?
Very much. That's the first place my mind
went. Me too. I said it to Spencer. When he was on his knees praying, and there's that shot where Marcus goes to see him.
Well, just the helmet and everything.
And he's doing the prayer, and he's sitting there. I'm like, oh my God, this is like a Souls game. So yeah, I mean,
you got this vibe. Cursed, vile soul whose only purpose is to die. So yes, you definitely very much got a Dark Souls vibe.
Yeah,
he's very religious. He seems to be, in a constant state of penance.
Yes, that was the exact vibe. That is exactly where my mind went. So here's the craziest scene. I thought one of the crazy scenes because I don't know. I really want to know what me and Spencer talked about it earlier today. Larry, I want to know what you think. Marcus has him and his wife are, they're sitting there and they're just like, we're stressed out. Let's have a little fun. And they're making love and having a nice time. And he has one hell of a vision where she's bleeding out and dying, basically. But if you look, it appears to be the scalpel that Mother created earlier.
I noticed that
in his hand. So the piercing marks seem to be from the scalpel. If in fact this is a vision of the future, how is so? I had two theories, and I want to know what you think. Theory one is these aliens, this AI, whatever it is, are time travelers. That's theory one. Theory two, they are very sophisticated and able to sort of project scenarios of what the future could hold, and maybe that's their way of predicting the future. I was just trying to think of how to explain it. I don't know. What did you
Yeah,
think?
there's that, or potentially, because they seem to be influencing people to do things, you know, they can control your mind to a degree. They can sort of write an idea into your head. They would, well,
So you
if
okay?
if it is the creature that we saw that they encountered in that cave, then as they mentioned, that thing's been watching the kids. It's been watching their camp. It's probably watching both groups. So it's seeing the scalpel that Mother's created before. It would know where both these things are, and it would probably possibly put the idea in his head, whatever this vision is supposed to mean, that it's something that needs to happen or something that will happen.
So it's not predicting the future, but guiding you to
Yeah,
the future that it wants.
it's guiding it. It's
It's a good
heavily
theory.
influencing it.
Any thoughts, Spencer?
No. I think that I don't think that it's time travel, but I do think that it is, whether it's the AI or, because remember the little stars map thing that he created in the head of that fucking dune snake, whatever it was. Good Lord. But it started swirling. So it started like moving around. It was almost like a hallucination. So I wasn't necessarily thinking it was like a vision or somebody was messing with him. I thought it was more of a, like, he ate something or drank something he shouldn't have. And like you said, Larry, earlier about the poisoning of the acorns, they're not
Yep.
as familiar. This group isn't as familiar as what they can and can't eat. And they're all hungry as shit. I think it was a hallucination because of something he ate, not necessarily either of the things that we want it to be.
The scalpel is the only reason that
same here,
to me,
because
the puzzle. Yeah,
because that was part of his vision before they found the kids. So he'd have no idea what that scalpel would look like.
I wasn't even thinking a scalpel anyway when I first saw it, which it probably was a scalpel, but the bullets, because remember they shot the previous thems, and where she was bleeding from was that area. Now, she would also have a scalpel too, though, because remember, she's the medic. So him holding a scalpel wouldn't be that unrealistic. Him,
And that's
seeing a
and that's
scalpel before isn't.
well, and that's likely, but it seemed to be a scalpel made out of the same materials as their pendants, which Mother melted down to make her scalpel.
But remember, she was one of them. The necromancer was for their side, so that may have been muscle memory too. She may have seen a scalpel before and made one similar to the ones that she had seen working with the followers of Saul or whatever.
That's a possibility, and given that it's his wife and everything, he would have seen her tools more than enough for. But then again, there's one difference.
That you're wrong. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm saying the one issue with that is that she wouldn't have done that previously. Like, this is the first they're seeing of her having any medical experience or knowledge. Like, they didn't even know of her having that within the simulation. So, like, her, like, and when she was a medic, she was a medic for the atheist. So,
the atheist,
yeah. So they would, so she likely wouldn't have a scalpel that looks like that.
Yeah, he would be more familiar with whatever they used.
Right.
But I didn't see her use anything as an atheist either, so I have no idea.
Yeah, clearly, regardless of what direction they take, the scalpel was specifically put there to throw us off, or to at least make us question the vision, because you're like, well, shit, I recognize that scalpel. Is he seeing the future? But yeah, as far as what, like I said, I just don't know what exactly. I don't know how that kind of stuff is working in this. Now, luckily they've explained to us that it is possible to manipulate the mind. The machines can do that. Like, so the idea
Right.
that it's not magic, that a machine or something is projecting something into his mind is definitely very possible in their world. There's 5 episodes left. There's a hell of a lot of mysteries. There's a lot going on. Do you think this ends in a way that to where if there's no more seasons, we're good, almost like a mini series, or do you think they end this thing on a cliffhanger? I was wondering. I was thinking about that.
I I think they'll end up with question marks, but not necessarily a cliffhanger. I think that they'll answer most of the questions, but they'll leave a couple bigger questions like hanging on. So that way, uh, either way, you're still satisfied with the overarching story, but you still have that, what was that cube or what was this? And that way, if they're able to continue it, great, you'll get the rest of the answers. But if they don't, then that way you're still not being like, well, what the fuck? They didn't answer any of the questions I had. I think that they'll do kind of a mix and answer most of them, but leave some of the overarching stuff as a mystery still.
Like, I think you'll get answers to a lot of the questions we have now, but I think all those answers will just bring up more questions. And by the end, you're gonna, much like at the end of Inception, you're gonna question, well, what really happened? Did it really end this way? People's minds are being messed with. People are being emotionally coerced to do things through technology. So it seems. So it's very hard right now to tell what is and what isn't. So I doubt towards the end it'll be any easier.
The final scene of episode 5 is them, the Marcus's coalition, finding the camp. So they know where the camp is. They're there. What happens next? Like I said, there's 5 episodes left. It's a good stopping point, I thought, for the 5th episode. The halfway point of the series. That's like a solid stopping point. Of course, they're not releasing this thing normally. They're releasing it in chunks in a very odd manner. So that's pretty much it for the show. Do you guys have any other major points? I think we hit all the major beats. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
I did want to talk about the little snake things for just a second.
Okay.
Because this guy is hiding out in this giant, like, whatever the
skeleton.
The AI ninja, whatever he is. Whatever.
Parkour guy.
Parkour guy.
Parkour. They show that giant fucking snake worm skeleton thing, and how many holes are in the ground and how deep they were, because Mother had to save Paul, and she flew down for forever and then scooped him up and then went back up. So now I'm thinking of that thing as a reptilian creature. Reptiles are cold-blooded, so they have to be closer to the center. But does that mean that this planet is, cyclic, where it's starting to thaw out and these things are going to come to the surface? My question is by the end of maybe next episode, that the followers of Saul and Mother and them aren't going to come together and try to fight whatever this is, or fight whatever the AI ninja is. I think that by the end of this series, they're not going to be enemies. They're going to be working together to defeat something else.
Hopefully, because there's not a lot of them left.
Yeah, Miberbergs.
but you're probably right though, that whatever the creature is, it's cold-blooded, and that, which leads me to believe there's a source of heat within those pits, because from what I'm seeing, the one that Paul and Campion saw seemed to be eating something within the pit, and that seems to be where they come from. Mm-hmm. So hopefully at some point soon, Mother, seeing how she's the only one that could easily do this, given her abilities, will explore one of those pits.
The show has gone out of its way every single episode, all 5, to show us those damn pits and nudging us towards the pits, and yet never really explaining them or talking about them. So yeah, I agree. There's something there, and we did see the creature in there, eating the fungus. So that seems to be where they're coming from. Why are there no animals on the planet? What's that all about? Yet there were large life forms there, so clearly they ate something. So there are a lot of mysteries to that planet itself, and yeah, I agree that at some point there's going to be some major reveals about that, which could definitely lead to a new conflict, a completely new conflict.
There's probably a lot of life in that area. It's probably just mostly underground.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, anything else?
I
No,
think
that
that's
was it.
all.
So yeah, everybody, we appreciate you guys listening. Yeah, this thing went over an hour. I thought it would. We try to keep these in the 30 to 40 minute range, but if they keep releasing 2 and 3 episodes, it's just going to be an hour. There's no way not for it not to be.
Right.
So anyone who's listened all the way through, we really appreciate it. We will be putting these up. We will, regardless of how they release the damn show, we will be reviewing the rest of it, the other 5 episodes. So Lovecraft Country on Sundays, unless they drop it on Saturday again. The Boys, we should have the Boys review up either tomorrow or Saturday. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.